So today's job is on this Astra K, which belongs to my mother-in-law. Replace the Almira, which you can just see in shot there. So she's had a bit of an accident which has shattered the mirror and removed the trim, and also removed a lot of the casing of the mirror itself. So let's see what we need to do in order to take that off. So looking at it, we have a panel here which will probably remove this, and then we can investigate how to get into the rest of it. There's no visible screws, so yeah, we'll see what we can find. So let's get started on this job. And one of the first things that we need to do is there are going to be a total of 7 bolts. One of them lives behind the trim panel on the door handle, release handle that you can see right at the top. The other set live behind this piece of trim, which runs along the armrest, and that prizes out using a simple pry trim piece removal tool. I would recommend getting a set of those. They're not that expensive and they avoid you damaging the surrounding plastic. Then you have, let me just count, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. 4 7mm bolts, which hold that in. And then down at the bottom, you've got in the center, you've got another 7mm bolt. And then on the leading edge, fairly adjacent to the speaker, you've then got your final 7mm bolt holding everything in place. Now, the door panel actually removes using brute force, believe it or not. You can use a trim pry tool, which I've got here, to pry around the edge of the door trim itself. But once you've got yourself a bit of purchase, just continue pulling gently until the door trim is released. Now, I've actually done this on quite a cold day, but to avoid damaging the trim itself, you could do this on a much warmer day when the plastic will be far more sort of pliable and malleable than it is at the moment. Fortunately, because GM have actually used quite a good quality plastic here, there's been no sort of breakages or anything of that nature, and it really just has sort of popped off its little sort of mounting points quite nicely. And that's those blue things that you can see just at the bottom of the picture. So the trim itself comes off, and then you have a Bowden cable locating the interior door handle, which comes off. And then you have a selection of wiring connectors, which also need to come off to get the trim out of the way. So you can see there, I'm just about to remove the one from the central door locking switch, and it is best to use a pry tool just to unclip that connector. You can see a larger wire going down to the electric window control pack. It's ideal to remove that one as well, so it allows you to get the door trim completely out of the way. And then located on the door card itself, or rather on the door itself, is the connector for the electric mirror, which is a block connector just behind my arm, down at the sort of bottom left, mid left of the picture. The loom for the mirror itself is actually separate and comes with the mirror when you buy a replacement, which is quite handy. So you don't need to worry about sort of splicing anything in. The mirror comes with the relevant connector, so sort of no worries on that front. You do need to pry back the weather shielding trim that you can see there, so it is a good idea to have some sort of glue available to re-adhere that. The mirror itself is actually held in with two 10mm bolts. As you can see there, the mirror sort of comes off fairly easily. The trim, sorry, the loom itself actually pulls out with the mirror. The new mirror, getting the loom in was a little bit tricky, so you need to spend a bit of time just sort of fishing it through. It's actually probably a good idea to have an assistant help you, so you can aim the loom in through the hole in the door, and an assistant can actually sort of grab the loom and pull it through the little hole that you can see that I've just done there. There's like a little rubber grommet, which sort of just pulls through and actually sort of sits really nicely in the door. It actually just literally pulled through and just popped into place. I was sort of quite impressed with sort of level of sort of attention to design, but that's something I've seen a lot when I've disassembled Vauxhalls and other GM vehicles before. There's always sort of nice, just it works style engineering touches, similar to sort of BMW, Mercedes, etc. It's just obviously been thought about. Anyway, the door trim itself or mirror itself then just goes back into place. You need to be a bit careful because you could lose those 10mm bolts down into the depths of the door, so just bear that in mind. Again, have an assistant hold the mirror so you can then sort of work on putting those 10mm bolts back in place. They don't need to be done up super tight, but just tight enough that the mirror makes a proper seal. There is a little weather gasket on the bottom of the mirror. Make sure that the new mirror is supplied with that, otherwise reuse the one from the old mirror. You can see now that I'm just reattaching the various loom connectors for the window switches, for the central lock-in switch, and a couple of other things such as the Bowding cable for the door handle. Now, as with all door trims, this is a little bit tricky getting it back in place. You've got to get the lock plunger through the little lock plunger hole, which has a little sort of plastic shield over it. Also, you've got to just sort of locate it into that. You might find at this point it's actually easier to have the window open so that you can put your hand actually through the window and then just hook the trim onto its little sort of top hooks right at the sort of top of the door. Once you get it in place, it is just a case of quite literally pounding it back into place to get those little clips to lap back in. And then it's a case of just putting those 7mm bolts back in place. You can see I'm doing there. There's not really sort of any particular order that these need to go back in, just as long as they're all back in place, as they do sort of help hold the door and stop any sort of shakes or rattles or anything of that nature. Little trim piece that goes back onto the door handle actually fits in from the back of the door. There's like a little sort of plastic pin on it that fits in and goes into the back of the door, and then it just clips into place. What you saw me do there was actually just test that the door can still be opened from the inside. So before you get too far of screwing everything back in, you can just close the door, make sure that the door handle works, and if you want, you can also just make sure that the windows still work as well. There you can see I'm just putting that door trim back in, clipping it back into place. It does sound a sort of a bit violent when you clip it back in, but don't worry, nothing seemed to have broken on my occasion, so it all seemed to be absolutely fine. The mirror trim, which I'm just fitting out of sight here, is fairly easy. Clips in at the bottom of the mirror and then sort of just gently clips into the top of the mirror to finish off. And here is final finished product. So what you can see is I've actually sprayed the mirror. The match isn't great, but it is okay. And there we go. Anyway, hope you found this useful. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.